Welcome to Rob Wright Stacks Pop Culture. Today, we're going to talk about heroes. And with me, as always, is the great Agent Pepsi One. How are you today, Agent Pepsi
Hey,
One?
I'm doing well, Rob. I am doing really well, other than the allergies, like always. But
Oh, I'm right there with you. My allergies have been killing me. It's just not fun. Folks, allergy medication only works a little bit. You got to do a whole lot to get rid of them. Oh,
oh my God,
and the worst is
nothing
the
helps.
cough. Yeah, it's just like, ugh.
And the nasal drip. That's the worst for me. But
Yeah, I've tried everything. Folks, if you got a nasal remedy or an allergy remedy, let us know in the comments below because we would love to hear it and we'd love to try something else. So let's begin this
absolutely.
discussion here. Yeah, let's begin this cool discussion here. So, what is a hero? How would you define a hero? What would you say a hero is? What do you think of when you think of heroes?
Well, I mean, I would think a hero is somebody that goes above and beyond what is considered normal.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of things that are above and beyond in times of war that are considered normal then.
Hmm.
But it's just somebody that does self-sacrifice. I mean, everybody. There's an old saying in the military that everybody gave something, but some gave all.
Oh yeah, all gave some gave all.
Yeah, and that is to me a sign of a hero. It's somebody that that sacrifices, for the country, for ideals, and that's hard to find.
Oh,
And some
absolutely.
and some just they go. I mean, they go that extra mile, that extra step, and they place themselves. I mean, everybody's placed in harm on in a battlefield, but they've really placed themselves in harm specifically to save and to contribute.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think a lot of times when we think of heroes, the first thing we think of is sometimes the heroes of the silver screen, that the people that we see, our favorite movies and TV shows, right? You
Right.
know, and we sometimes emulate them and raise them up. And granted, these are great stories, and I love all these movies and these characters and these people. Certainly, all these actors who played these wonderful roles, and some of them even played soldiers and other types of people. But really, the heroes aren't necessarily them. They play them on the screen, but here we go. Here are some real heroes. These are some statues from near Utah Beach, and these are statues of real men who basically risked their all on this.
Mhm.
And then here are heroes that we're familiar with. This is a picture of Easy Company, the band of brothers, and this is in the Utah Beach Museum. Pretty cool picture, right?
Very cool picture. Yeah, I mean, it's just one thing, but I mean, these are people that, for the life of me, I don't know why anybody would want to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft, but this is what heroes do.
Oh yeah. And then this is Omaha Beach. So, and if you know anything about Omaha Beach, this is Dog Green. This is where the heaviest casualties in the war
Mhm.
were. But the real heroes are here. This is the cemetery, the American cemetery in Normandy. Very solemn place. Statues don't do it justice.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you deal with the history. It's remembrance. But there is
Hmm.
something I do want to say about this. There are a lot of these actors that play like soldiers and sailors on TV and in the movies, but a lot of them have also served
Oh
in
yeah.
in roles like Mr. Doohan, who was at D-Day, as you know, and he lost one of his fingers on his hand. which was blown off. And you have people you really don't think about, like that British actor. God, what was his name? Christopher Lee.
Oh yeah, in
You know,
intelligence. Yeah. Oh
yeah,
gosh.
he was an intelligence operative, and I do believe he was also in North Africa with long range reconnaissance, where they did these reconnaissance missions out in the desert. It's like a couple of
Oh
guys in
yeah.
like in a Land Rover. So this guy is, I mean, he is a genuine article.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you have a lot of others. Audrey Murphy, who after the war became an actor. He was the
Yep.
highest.
We're gonna
He was,
talk about him.
yeah, he was the highest. He was the most decorated American soldier. And you have
Mm-hmm.
some people you don't think about. I mean, people like Clint Eastwood, for example, they didn't serve in World War II. He served during the Korean era,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
you have all kinds of people. Jimmy Stewart, of course, a famous
Oh yeah.
pilot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
Clark Gable, a gunner and a bomber during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ronald Reagan served. I want to say it was in the Navy.
Yes. There are several, especially in the Navy and the Marines. Like Lee Marvin served in the
Lee
Marines.
Marvin, exactly. Now
Yeah.
he was either Guadalcanal. No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he
Not
was.
Guadalcanal. Was he
Guadalcanal, I
Guadalcanal?
think. Yeah,
Yeah,
either Guadalcanal or Okinawa. I can't remember, but yeah.
yeah, I was going to say Iwo Jima, but I mean, he is the real deal.
Yes,
Steve
he is.
McQueen served in the Marines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and people you don't think of the crazy guy from what's that show from the 60s, Mayberry, that
Oh,
played a
yeah. You're talking about Gomer Pyle, the guy who played
no,
Gomer
not
Pyle.
not 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 Gomer Pyle, no, in Mayberry,
Oh, Don Knotts?
Down Knotts, he served in the Army, I believe,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and,
Yes.
I mean, and there were a lot of others.
Yeah. Several
Kelly
athletes as well.
Kelly Savalas, for if of all things, he was a medic, and he served in Bastogne during World War II.
Oh, he was in Bastogne. Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
mean,
mention Bastogne. I've got pictures of Bastogne.
so I mean, there were a lot that have served. I think this is how they can portray these actors. And
Mm-hmm.
you have foreign actors that I mean they're not that old. Like well, I mean, they're old now, but like Arnold Schwarzenegger before he came into acting and bodybuilding, he served with the Austrian army because he's from Austria,
Yeah, he
and
he ran a tank.
yeah, he ran a tank. I mean, and things like that. It's people don't see that.
No, they don't. So yeah, it's very interesting. But as we look at this memorial here, I want to call attention to this. So this thing I zoomed in on. So on the walls are the names of people who had passed away, but they hadn't found their remains. And there are all kinds of graveyards over Normandy because they did a lot of makeshift graveyards, and they're still finding some. And the interesting thing is you zoom in on those black dots, and those black dots are the guys whose body parts have been found and given proper burial. So really cool, really interesting. But as we mentioned, several actors are heroes, um, but these are the real heroes. These are the men that gave everything. These are the ones that sacrificed the best years of their lives
Mhm.
for freedom. And
Exactly.
as you see the crosses, you see the beauty. It's right near Omaha Beach, this graveyard. Um, and you see these wonderful graves um, with lots of heroic men. And you'll even see that there's a Star of David for those of the Jewish faith as well in these pictures. But it gives you a sense of what they did and what they accomplished and how grateful we should be for them. So here's another really close up view of what the graves look like there. Very solemn place.
Mhm.
And then here's a great view of the American flag with the rows of crosses. So today we're going to talk about some heroes of World War II, particularly those who won uh, Distinguished Service Crosses, a few, but mainly Medal of Honor around D-Day and in the European theater. There's so many to mention. Most of these guys are around D-Day with their Medal of Honors. There are some that are past that because I got to see their graves. We're going to show you their gravesite. We're going to tell you about them. And then also, um, we're not including the Pacific, so this is just the European theater. We will get to the Pacific at some point, but I wanted to read you this. This is from the cemetery in the Netherlands, and it says, "Here we and all who shall hereafter live in freedom will be reminded that to these men and their comrades we owe a debt to be paid with grateful remembrance of their sacrifice, and with this high resolve that the cost for which they died shall live."
Mhm.
Beautiful words.
It is, and true.
Hmm. Very true. All right, so we're going to get into some of these winners, and we're going to talk about them. Basically, what we're going to talk about is the actions that they did to earn their citation. So, a couple of guys that I want to talk about first are Distinguished Service Cross winners, and these two men that I learned about on my trip did some amazing things. The first one is somebody that you may not know real well. His name was John Atchley, and he was with the tank division. Here is his grave. And he was in St. Marie and Glisse. And St. Marie and Glisse, you may know from several movies with paratroopers, particularly The Longest Day, where the paratrooper lands, their parachute gets caught on the basically the clock of the church, the steeple. That's St. Marie and Glisse. Unfortunately, it was a real rainy day, and I couldn't really get good pictures of the town, but I got good pictures of the chapel. But here's what he did to earn a Distinguished Service Cross, pretty close to a Medal of Honor here. Basically, the President of the United States authorized this Distinguished Cross to Private John E. Atchley, United States Army, for extraordinary heroism in connection with the military operations against an armed enemy while serving with Company H, 3rd Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division, in action against enemy forces on June 7th in France. When the enemy counterattacked with tanks in the vicinity of St. Marie and Glisse, one of the very few anti-tank guns at the disposal of the defending force had been put out of action due to the fact that most of the members of its crew were casualties. So the anti-tank gun got the men in the anti-tank gun were hit, and nobody knew how to use it. As the enemy tanks approached, Private Atchley, despite the fact that he never previously fired an anti-tank gun, left his place of cover and fearlessly moved over to man the gun. Although without aid, Private Atchley's second shot destroyed one of the advancing tanks, whereupon the other tanks turned about and retreated. The courage, daring, and complete disregard for his life displayed by Private Atchley reflects great credit upon himself and in keeping with the highest traditions of the armed forces. Unfortunately, Private Atchley was killed in action near Belgium during the Battle of the Bulge. Private Atchley had served in the Battle of Normandy, Market Garden in the Netherlands, and the Battle of the Bulge. And a swimming pool at Fort Bragg is actually named for him. But yeah, this is his grave, and this is what he looked like. And nobody really talks about him. They all want to talk about the paratrooper that got caught on the bell tower here. This is the bell tower at St. Marie and Glisse. They do have like a fake dummy soldier that hangs. I don't know if I got a good shot of the dummy soldier. I might have gotten it with my regular camera, but he took action there, and I think his action is probably stronger than a paratrooper getting caught. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I would say so. I mean, it's pretty interesting to me that he would do this. Of course, you don't have anti-tank guns anymore,
Mm-mm.
like they were describing, but for someone who has never fired such a weapon, or I thought that was pretty extraordinary that he was able to utilize it.
Oh, absolutely. And to knock
So
out a tank and to basically knock uh, the Germans or keep the Germans from coming in with their tanks and retaking Saint Marie and Glees, that's just fantastic.
yeah, especially that what I know that American anti-tank guns, these towed guns, were not very powerful during the Second World War.
Mhm.
So this is something even more extraordinary. Now, I personally never heard of this action, but
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's so important, so significant. Not a lot of people have heard of it. That's why I think we should honor Ashley for doing that. I mean,
oh,
it's
absolutely.
fantastic. All right. The next uh, Distinguished Service Cross is a very familiar person. It's Richard Winters from Band of Brothers fame. And Agent Pepsi One, do you want to read about his citation?
Yeah, I mean, I will. Richard Winters at Barcourt, Barcourt Manor action. The President of the United States of America authorized by act of Congress, it gave him the Distinguished Service Cross to First Lieutenant uh, Richard Davis Winters, United States Army for extraordinary heroism connection with the military operations against the armed enemy while serving with company. Well, it would be Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division in action against the enemy on June 6, 1944 in France. So this is directly on during the D-Day landings.
Mm-hmm.
Lieutenant Winters, with 7 enlisted men, advanced through intense enemy automatic weapons fire, putting out of action 2 guns of the battery of 405 millimeter howitzers. These were shelling the beachhead. Unswerving in his determination to complete his self-appointed and extremely hazardous task, First Lieutenant Winters and his group withdrew for reinforcements. He later returned with tank support, and the remaining 2 guns were put out of action, resulting in decreased opposition to our forces landing on the beachhead. First Lieutenant Winters' heroic and determined leadership exemplify the highest traditions of the military forces of the United States and reflect great credit upon himself, the 101st Airborne Division in the United States Army. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
that is quite heroic.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, I
And
mean, something like that is just, and something what people don't understand is paratroopers. They are light. They are not. They have to travel relatively light. And when I say that is, they don't have a lot of supplies with them. Although
mhm.
they probably carry the heaviest loads into combat. So I mean, he probably had 100 and something pounds of equipment with him. So this is
Yeah,
just
but a lot of it was lost. Remember, a lot of it they put in the leg bag, and then when they were dropped and scattered, some of their equipment was lost because they were flying at heavier speeds and lower altitude than
right,
normal for jumping. And so a lot of these guys lost weapons and they had to regain weapons. So basically, Winters got his orders to go take out these guns. They didn't even know about them prior to
right,
D-Day, and they were shelling the Utah beach. And it's significant that he took these out because they were firing on the beach. The other aspect of it is that not only took out the guns, they did it in a way that's still taught in the military today. And the other aspect of this is that, you know, they took out not only the gunnery group, but there was a whole battalion of soldiers that were backing those guys up that got taken out when he brought in the tanks. So
right.
it's interesting. And here, let me show you pictures of Brecourt Manor and exactly what happened. So first off, this last slide here, real quick, I'll go back one. This is in Holland, and this is the headquarters, division headquarters in Holland, in the Netherlands. And you can see a very, very, very good-looking young man trying to emulate Dick Winters here. And then here is the statue in Normandy, and there's another good-looking man that's standing in front of it. But this was dedicated to
Yeah.
Dick Winters, and it's near Brecourt Manor.
Mhm.
So Brecourt Manor, this is actually Brecourt Manor. So this is the basically the memorial to Company E and their actions here. So there are two fields. So there's a main field right here, and further down the road was a farmhouse. So what happened is Easy Company was told to take out these guns. So they grabbed a ton of ammo and everything they could carry. Well, they put their extra ammo in the barn and they crawled across this field. So across this field, in these bushes right here, just beyond the memorial, that's where the guns were.
Mhm.
Okay. And there were four of them positioned in various spots firing at the beach. The picture down here is another picture of this same field. And this tree right here that's sticking up is the tree that Lipton climbed. So if you know who Carwood Lipton was, he's one of the members of the Band of Brothers who he climbed the tree and he could shoot down at the Germans who were firing the guns. This picture right here is actually from the manor itself in the field on the other side. And so the guns were placed right in here. So there are these ditches. Basically, you've got a lot of foliage and it kind of slopes down, kind of like a water ditch. And that's kind of where the guns were placed. And they were hidden because there's so much good quality foliage because Normandy gets a lot of rain and these trees can grow real leafy year round. And so that's where the guns were. And so you had them crawl across this field, come in and take the guns one by one. Now, in Band of Brothers, it's shown, in the aspect of 20 minutes trying to tell the story, but it took hours. It took all day to get 2 to 3 guns and to wipe out all four of them took about 9 hours.
Mhm.
Um, so this was no small feat. This was very, very highly skilled, highly technician. And he really didn't lose a lot of men on this, too. I mean, they were able to go in and really knock this out. It's phenomenal. Now, was it deserving of Medal of Honor? I don't know. A lot of people say so. Richard Winters didn't feel he deserved the Medal of Honor for this. I do feel he deserved a Medal of Honor, but not for this action. I feel he deserved it for what he did in the Netherlands, where he captured those 2 battalions. But we'll talk about that when we talk about Band of Brothers in a couple of weeks. But as you can see, pretty interesting stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that they didn't know those 105 millimeter howitzers were there because
Mm-hmm.
those are mobile weapons, and they're
Mm-hmm.
probably just in place maybe a couple of hours before, maybe a day before. But that's they're designed for rapid movement.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's suicide coming across a field.
Yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
the air is filled with flying metal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, yeah, these guys were something else.
Yeah. They were, and to crawl across that field. I mean, my goodness, it's just crazy. But yeah, I felt like both of these two men got distinguished service crosses, but I felt like their stories need to be told because their actions were so heroic. And we're going to get into the Medal of Honor winners, and the Medal of Honor is a significant award in the military. It's rare to get, and really, some of the ways that you would win a Medal of Honor, based upon what I was told, are for outstanding leadership,
Mhm.
which a good example was Dick Winters here. Self-sacrifice. Obviously, we know what that is, and the other one is being a badass. And personally, I think Atchley's actions were pretty badass, and it kind of almost defines what it was. But we're going to talk about some of the Medal of Honor winners right now, and we're going to tell their stories, their citations, and we'll start with the leadership winners. And one in particular was the son of a former president. Agent Pepsi One, do you want to read about Teddy Roosevelt Jr.?
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt Jr. He was, of course, the son of President Teddy Roosevelt, as the name would suggest. And if you look at him, you can you can you can see the resemblance between President Roosevelt and you know that's Theodore Roosevelt. Now, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I believe, is his uncle.
Yes.
So, yeah, so General Roosevelt, this gentleman right here, he was awarded for gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty on the 6th of June, 1944, in France. Now, mind you, if you look at the man, he is obviously not a young man.
Mm-mm.
Now, he must have been, I mean, just looking at the picture, I'm not so sure, but looking at the picture, I would say he's in his late 40s, early 50s at the time, maybe.
Yes.
And so that is quite old to be a combat officer out in the field.
Yes.
So here's what happened after 2 verbal requests to accompany leading assault elements in the Normandy invasion have been denied. General Roosevelt's written request for this mission was approved. I mean, he didn't have to go. And he said, hey, I'm going anyway. I'm the general. And, you talked about these people being badass, unquote. I think you could scratch that from the list because they're all badass no matter what.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I mean, so let me see what happened. General Roosevelt's written request for the mission has been approved as he landed with the first wave of forces assaulting enemy-held beaches. For a flag officer to do that is insane. They're normally well behind the lines. He repeatedly led groups from the beach over a seawall and established them inland. So he built a beachhead. His valor, courage, and presence in the very front of the attack, and his complete unconcern for being under heavy fire inspired his troops to heights of enthusiasm and self-sacrifice. Although the enemy had the beach under constant direct fire, General Roosevelt moved from one locality to another, rallying his men around him, directed and personally led them against the enemy. Under his seasoned, precise, calm, and unfaltering leadership, assault troops reduced beach strong points and repeatedly moved inland with minimum casualties. He thus contributed substantially to the successful establishment of the beachhead in France. Yes, indeed, and something else. If memory serves, he was also an officer in the First World War.
Yes, he was. And his brother actually died in the First World War and was reburied in Normandy right next to him.
So I mean, this is this man is by any definition a hero.
Yes. And folks, this is a picture of Utah Beach. And this is the beachhead where he landed and led his men.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at that, I were to tell you that is a killing field. What is the things the Germans had with their infamous MG-42 machine gun? It was called Hitler's buzzsaw for exactly that reason. It fired roughly 20 rounds a second. So, yeah, I mean that is significant, and my hat is way off to these guys that came up on these beaches.
Oh yeah, I mean it's crazy. The amount of self-sacrifice, what they did, going right into danger. I mean, incredible. So, but yeah, that's Utah Beach, and that's what Teddy Roosevelt Jr. did. Let's talk about another hero here, Robert G. Cole. So Robert G. Cole is the one who got the Medal of Honor instead of Dick Winters for the 101st. And this is awesome what he did. And I'm going to show you pictures of what he did. So Robert G. Cole, for gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his own life and beyond the call of duty on the 11th of June, 1944 in France, Lieutenant Colonel Cole was personally leading his battalion in forcing the last 4 bridges on the road to Carentan, while his entire unit was suddenly pinned down to the ground by intense and withering enemy fire, machine gun, mortar, and artillery fire placed upon them from well-prepared and heavily fortified positions within 150 yards of the foremost elements. So he came in from the north end of Carentan. Basically, you see in Band of Brothers, you see them taking Carentan. They came in from, I believe, the east side, and it was not as heavily fortified as the area where Robert Cole came in. So basically, they were within 150 yards of the elements. After the devastating and unceasing enemy fire had, for over 1 hour, prevented any move and inflicted numerous casualties, Lieutenant Cole, observing this almost hapless situation, courageously issued the order to assault the enemy positions with fixed bayonets. So they're going into an enemy position, fixing bayonets, getting ready to charge. With utter disregard for his own safety and completely ignoring the enemy fire, he rose to his feet in front of his battalion and with drawn pistol shouted to his men to follow him in the assault. Catching up a fallen man's rifle and bayonet, he charged on and led the remnants of his battalion across the bullet-swept open ground and into the enemy position. His heroic and vibrant action and so inspiring his men resulted in the complete establishment of our bridgehead across the Dove River. The cool fearlessness, personal bravery, and outstanding leadership displayed by Lieutenant Colonel Cole reflected great credit upon himself and are worthy of the highest praise in military service. So
Absolutely.
we placed flowers by his grave, and he died in not in Normandy. He was able to survive there, but he died in Market Garden. And this is kind of where he did the charge. So this is the memorial to him. And you'll see basically behind here is the river and a couple of ditches. And this is where his men were pinned down in these ditches. And this is kind of talks about his bayonet charge. So this is kind of the field where they charged, and they charged towards this house back here where the Germans were occupying it. So fixed bayonets, and they charge right across this field right here. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a bayonet charge is basically the last resort.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, I mean, it takes a special kind of courage to do that. I am not sure that I would have the courage to do that.
Oh no, that takes special kind of courage. Especially when you're pulling. So he went with his gun and he grabbed a rifle and did it himself. I mean, if that's not leading by example, I don't know what is. But
Yeah, I mean, that takes a special kind of courage.
mm-hmm. Yep. All right, let's get to our next Medal of Honor winner, John Bud Hawk. You want to read about him?
Yeah, I'll read about him. John Bud Hawk, he manned a light machine gun. Hold on just a second. Sorry, my allergies.
Oh yeah.
He manned a light machine gun on the 20th of August, 1944, near these French names? Chambois, thank you. France. A key point in the encirclement, which created the Falaise pocket. During the enemy counterattack, his position was menaced by a strong force of tanks and infantry. His fire forced the infantry to withdraw, but an artillery shell knocked out his gun and wounded him in the right thigh. Securing a bazooka, he and another man stalked the tanks and forced them to retire to a wooded section. In the lull which followed, Sergeant Hawk recognized two machine gun squads and, in face of intense enemy fire, directed. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, here we go. Intense enemy fire directed the assembly of one workable weapon from two damaged guns. When another enemy assault developed, he was forced to pull back from the pressure of the spearheading armor. Two of our tank destroyers were brought up. Their shots were ineffective because of the terrain until Sergeant Hawk, despite his wounds, boldly climbed to an exposed position on the knoll where, unmoved by attacks from the enemy, he became a human aiming stayed for the destroyers. Realizing that his shouted fire directions could not be heard above the noise of battle, he ran back to the destroyers through a concentration of bullets and shrapnel to correct the range. He returned to his exposed position, repeating this performance until 2 of the tanks were knocked out and his third driven off. Still at great risk, he continued to direct the tank destroyers' fire onto the German wooded positions until the enemy came out and surrendered. Sergeant Hawk's fearless initiative and heroic conduct while suffering from painful wound was in the large measure responsible for crushing 2 desperate attempts by the enemy to escape the Fally's pocket and for taking more than 500 prisoners.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah,
Can you imagine that?
That is just insane. Yeah, that is just insane.
Yep, and he lived to get presented the Medal of Honor here by the President Truman. And then here he is later in life, and here's kind of his plaque. So,
I have met 2 Medal of Honor winners, and it's always a pleasure to do so.
oh wow, that's awesome.
It is a great honor.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, just amazing. All right, let's talk about a pilot. Bob Vance. He was a pilot, and here's more of Bud's when he was in the service, and also some of his other medals. I forgot about that. But
Yeah,
here's Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, look at those. If you could go back, look at those medals.
Oh yeah.
Look what he had. You had, I believe that it's hard to see for me right from here, but that looks like a Bronze Star.
Mm-hmm. Purple Heart.
That's a Purple Heart, and you have several campaign medals.
Mm-hmm.
There's a badge for combat infantry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, this guy he is very much legitimate.
Oh yeah, Bud Hawk. Wow. I mean, gosh. Oh my goodness. But let's move from the ground into the air, and we'll talk about Bob Vance. Bob Vance won the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty on June 5th, 1944, when he led a heavy bombardment group in an attack against the defended enemy coastal position in the vicinity of Wimereux, France. Approaching the target, his aircraft was hit repeatedly by anti-aircraft fire, or flak, which seriously crippled the ship, killed the pilot, and wounded several members of the crew, including Lieutenant Colonel Vance, whose right foot was practically severed. Ouch. In spite of his injury, and with 3 engines lost to the flak, he led his formation over the target, bombing it successfully. After applying a tourniquet to his leg with the aid of the radar operator, Lieutenant Colonel Vance, realizing that his ship was approaching a stall altitude with 1 remaining engine failing, struggling to a semi-upright position beside the co-pilot, and took over control of the ship. Cutting the power and feathering the last engine, he put the aircraft in glide sufficiently steep enough to maintain its airspeed. Gradually losing altitude, he at last reached the English coast, whereupon he ordered all members of the crew to bail out, as he knew they would all safely make land. But he received a message over the interphone system, which led him to believe that one of the crew members was unable to jump due to injuries. So he made the decision to ditch the ship in the channel, thereby giving this man a chance for life. To add further to the danger of ditching the ship in the channel, his crippled condition where there was a 500-pound bomb hung up in the bomb bay. Unable to climb into the seat vacated by the co-pilot, since his foot hanging to his leg by a few tendons had become lodged behind the co-pilot's seat, he nevertheless made a successful ditching while lying on the floor using only aileron and elevators for control, and the side window of the cockpit for visual reference. On coming to rest in the water, the aircraft commenced to sink rapidly, with Lieutenant Colonel Vance pinned in the cockpit by the upper turret, which had crashed during the landing. As it was settling beneath the waves, an explosion occurred, which threw Lieutenant Colonel Vance clear of the wreckage. After clinging to a piece of floating wreckage until he could muster enough strength to inflate his life vest, he began searching for the crew member who he believed to be aboard. Failing to find anyone, he began swimming and was found approximately 50 minutes later by an air-sea rescue craft. By his extraordinary flying, skilled and gallant leadership, despite his grave injury, Lieutenant Colonel Vance led his formation to a successful bombing of the assigned target and returned the crew to a point where they could bail out with safety. His gallant and valorous decision to ditch the aircraft in order to give the crew member he believed to be aboard a chance for life exemplifies the highest traditions of the U.S. Armed Forces.
Oh my God. Jesus almighty.
Yeah, crazy stuff. And unfortunately, after this, he was on his way home and his plane was never found.
Oh
It caught
no.
bad weather and crashed somewhere near Iceland or Greenland. Pretty sad. Sad story. But, what a gallant hero. My goodness. To be able to do that with your plane and to save the lives of your men. That's just amazing.
The pain must have been unbearable.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine that. I mean, good grief. Just absolutely insane stuff. All right, let's talk about some of the men that made self sacrifices. We're gonna shift gears and we're gonna talk about Carlton William Barrett. Do you want to read about him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Carlton William Barrett, for gallantry and integrity, at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty on the 6th of June, 1944, in the vicinity of Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer in France on the morning of D-Day, Private Barrett, lacking in the face of extremely heavy enemy fire, was forced to wade through neck-deep water, disregarding his personal danger. He returned to the surf again and again to assist his floundering comrades to save them from drowning, refusing to remain pinned down by intense barrage of small arms and mortar fire poured at the landing points. Private Barrett, working with fierce determination, saved many lives, carrying casualties to an evacuation boat lying offshore. In addition to his assigned mission as guide, he carried dispatches the length of the fire-swept beach. He assisted the wounded. He claimed the shocked. He rose
From the
as a
shop.
leader, and the stress of the occasion. His coolness and dauntlessness during the courage, while constantly risking his life during a period of many hours, had an inestimable effect on his comrades and is in keeping with the highest traditions of the U.S. Army. Yeah, that is that's quite something.
Oh
And
yeah.
and he deserved the Medal of Honor for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right, let's talk about John Butts. He's another one. You see his grave right here, and you see a picture of him. He heroically led his platoon against enemy in Normandy, France, on the 14th, 16th, and 23rd of June, 1944. Although painfully wounded on the 14th near the Orglands, and again on the 16th while spearheading the attack to establish a bridgehead across the Douve River, he refused medical aid and remained with his platoon. A week later, near Bottomanville Hog, he led an assault on a tactically important and stubbornly defended hill studded with tanks, anti-tank guns, pillboxes, and machine gun encampments, and protected by concentrated artillery and mortar fire. As the attack was launched, Second Lieutenant Butts, at the head of the platoon, was quickly wounded by German machine gun fire. Although weakened by his injuries, he rallied his men and directed one squad to make a flank movement while he alone made a frontal assault to draw the hostile fire upon himself. So he directed his men one direction while he went up another and drew the fire while they went around. Once more, he was struck, but by grim determination and sheer courage, continued to crawl ahead. When within 10 yards of his objective, he was killed by direct fire. By his superb courage, unflinching valor, and inspiring actions, Second Lieutenant Butts enabled his platoon to take the formidable strong point and contributed greatly to the success of his battalion's mission.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say to that? I mean, there's not much that can be said.
For an already wounded soldier to say, hey guys, go around this way, I'll take the brunt of the fire this way and draw it. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. All right, do you want to talk about Arthur Frank DeFranco?
Absolutely. With specious gallantry and interpreting at the risk of his own life, above and beyond the call of duty on the 10th of June, 1944, near Valdon, France. As scouts were advancing across an open field, the enemy suddenly opened fire with several machine guns and hit one of the men. Sergeant DeFranco courageously moved out in the open to aid the wounded scout and was himself wounded, but brought the men to safety. Refusing aid, Sergeant DeFranco re-entered the open field and led the advance upon the enemy. There were always at least 2 machine guns bringing unrelenting fire upon him, but Sergeant DeFranco kept going forward, firing into the enemy, and one by one the enemy emplacements became silent. While advancing, he was again wounded, but continued until he was within 100 yards of the enemy position, and even as he fell, he kept firing his rifle and waving his men forward. When his company came up behind him, Sergeant DeFranco, despite his many severe wounds, suddenly raised himself once more and moved forward in the lead of his men until he again was hit by enemy fire. In a final gesture of indomitable courage, he threw several grenades at the enemy machine gun position and completely destroyed the gun. In this action, Sergeant DeFranco lost his life, but bearing the brunt of the enemy fire and leading the attack, he prevented a delay in the assault, which would have been considerable benefit to the foe. And he made possible his company's advance with a minimum of casualties. The extraordinary heroism and magnificent devotion to duty displayed by Sergeant DeFranco was a great inspiration to all about him and in keeping with the highest traditions of the armed forces.
Man, oh man.
Yeah,
Can you imagine this?
Jesus.
Oh, wow. Take a licking and keep on ticking.
Yeah, I mean, my God. I mean, this guy.
Yeah. Getting hit, leading his men, getting up, leading him again, and then his final act is to throw grenades and take out a machine gun unit. My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that is a lot. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. All right. Let's talk about Charles DeGlopper. All right. So he was a member of Company C, 325th Glider Infantry. And oh my gosh, this guy's awesome. On the 9th of June, 1944, advancing with forward platoon to secure a bridgehead across the Meurthe River at La Fierce, France. At dawn, the platoon had penetrated an outer line of machine guns and riflemen, but in so doing had become cut off from the rest of the company. Vastly superior forces began a dissemination of the stricken unit and put in motion a flanking maneuver which would have completely exposed the American platoon in the shallow roadside ditch where it had taken cover. Detecting the danger, Private First Class DeGlopper volunteered to support his comrades by fire from his automatic rifle while they attempted to withdraw through a break in the hedgerow 40 yards to the rear. Scoring a concentration of enemy automatic weapon and rifle fire, he walked from the ditch into the road full of Germans and sprayed the hostile position with assault fire. He was wounded but continued firing. Struck again, he started to fall, and yet his grim determination and valiant fighting spirit could not be broken. Kneeling in the roadway, weakened by his grievous wounds, he levied his heavy weapon against the enemy and fired burst after burst until killed outright. He was successful in drawing the enemy action away from his fellow soldiers, who continued the fight from a more advantageous position and established the first bridgehead over the Murderet. In the area where he made his interpret stand, his comments later found the ground strewn with dead Germans and many machine guns and automatic weapons, which he had knocked out of action. DeGlopper's gallant sacrifice and unflinching heroism while facing insurmountable odds were in great measure responsible for the highly important tactical victory in the Normandy campaign. Whoa. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that is.
another guy that is drawing fire, and this guy was part of the glider unit that joined up with these guys. I mean, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, these people. My goodness. Yeah, I mean, what do you say to that? There's nothing that can be added.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yep. All right. So the next one's kind of a special circumstance. It was Joe Gandara. And basically, you could bypass some of this, but basically, he was a Hispanic American who they upgraded his Distinguished Service Cross to a Medal of Honor. Basically, they were trying to basically honor veterans of Hispanic, Jewish, uh, or or other races for military valor back in 2002, and then again in 2010. Agent Pepsi One, do you want to read what was the Distinguished Service Cross citation and what he did to change it to the Medal of Honor? They changed it to the Medal of Honor and what he did.
Yeah, let me read that. The President of the United States, authorized by this Act of Congress, 9 July 1918, takes pride in presenting Distinguished Service Cross posthumously to Private Joe Gondera, United States Army, for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy while serving with Delta Company, 2nd Battalion, 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division in action against enemy forces on the 9th of June, 1944 in France. When this detachment came under devastating enemy fire from a strong German force, pinning the men to the ground for a period of 4 hours, Gondera advanced voluntarily and alone towards the enemy firing position, firing his machine gun from a carried position as he moved forward. He destroyed 3 hostile machine guns before he was fatally wounded. His selfless devotion to duty and outstanding valor, Gondera prevented heavy casualties to members of the detachment.
Uh-oh. You okay?
His allergies is just killing me.
That's okay.
At the cost of his life, exemplified the highest traditions of the military forces of the United States and reflect great credit upon himself, the 82nd Airborne Division, and the United States Army. And it says the citation represents the soldier's rank at the time of the action.
Yeah. So it was upgraded to a Medal of Honor. I think it was worthy. I mean, he took out 3 machine gun units by himself.
Yeah, that was definitely worthy of a Medal of Honor, and he did it very conspicuously.
Yeah. So I totally agree with this being upgraded to Medal of Honor. My goodness, that's crazy.
Hey, Rob, hold on for just a second. I have to go tinkle. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Yeah, folks, these men have really done just a brilliant job. I mean, it's outstanding. Learning about these guys and what they did. my trip, the reason why I was inspired to make this video and to talk about this was because I heard all these stories. So we went to the graveyards and we got to see the graves of some of these Medal of Honor winners. And the cool thing about the Medal of Honor winners and their gravestones, as you can see right here, as the next person we're going to talk about, John Kelly, they're all done in gold. And basically, what happens is you get to it gets displayed in gold because it's outstanding, and it's outstanding bravery, outstanding times for these guys, and so their memorials are marked this way. Now, the other interesting thing about Normandy and some of these graveyards in Europe is the families got to determine whether or not they stayed over there or if they came home. And you'll notice that some of these men were brought back home and buried home, like Private Guadalajara that we just talked about, Galanda, who we just talked about. He's buried back home, but some of these guys are still buried over there, and that's where I heard a lot of these wonderful, interesting stories. So.
Hey, I'm back.
Cool. All right, let's get back into this and get back into our slideshow here. And we're talking about John Kelly here. So he was awarded the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life beyond the call of duty. On the 25th of June, 1944, in the vicinity of Fort de Rolle, Cherbourg, France, when Corporal Kelly's unit was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire emanating from the deeply entrenched strong point on a slope leading up to the fort, Corporal Kelly volunteered to attempt to neutralize the strong point. Armed himself with a pole charge and about 10 feet long and 15 pounds of explosive affixed, he climbed the slope under withering blast of machine gun fire and placed the charge at the strong point's base. The subsequent blast was ineffective, and again, alone and unhesitantly, he braved the slope to repeat the operation. The second blast blew off the ends of the enemy guns. Corporal Kelly then climbed the slope a third time to place his pole charge at the strong point's rear entrance. When this had been blown open, he hurled grenades inside position, forcing survivors of the enemy gun crews to come out and surrender. The gallantry, tenacity of purpose, and utter disregard for personal safety displayed by Corporal Kelly were an incentive to his comrades and worthy of emulation by all. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that is, considering that this pole charge is actually it's not designed for that.
Nope.
It's it's like it was a designed for demolition work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is insane. And he did it 3 times.
Oh, yeah. Insane. All right. Let's talk about a medic. There's a medic here, William D. McGee. Do you want to talk about him?
Yeah, a medical aidman, so he's a corpsman. He made a night crossing of the Moselle River with troops endeavoring to capture the town of Mulheim, which I've actually been to Mulheim, France.
Mm-hmm.
That's just on the German border by the
Mm-hmm.
Rhine River.
Yep.
The enemy had retreated to a sector where the assault boats landed, but had left the shore heavily strewn with anti-personnel mines. 2 men from the first wave attempting to work their way forward detonated mines, which wounded them seriously, leaving them bleeding and in great pain beyond the reach of their comrades. Entirely on his own initiative, Private McGee entered the minefield, brought out one of the injured to comparative safety, and returned to rescue the second victim when he stepped on a mine and was severely wounded in the resulting explosion. Although suffering intensely and bleeding profusely, he shouted orders that none of his comrades to risk their lives for his entering the death-strewn field to render first aid that might have saved his own life. In making the supreme sacrifice, Private McGee demonstrated concern for the well-being of his fellow soldiers that transcended all considerations for his own safety and gallantry in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service.
Yeah. So
Now
basically,
that is
yeah,
wow.
yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing.
Yep. Apparently, he grabbed a pistol and told his guys, "Don't come in here." But it's just phenomenal. And I got to see his grave, and we left flowers at his grave. Um, it's just amazing. His sacrifice. I mean, my goodness, definitely worthy of Medal of Honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, let me talk about Carlos Ogden. So, on the morning of June 25th, 1944, near Fort Bragg, guarding the approaches to the Cherbourg, France, First Lieutenant Ogden's company was pinned down by fire from 88s and 2 German machine guns. Arming himself with an M1 rifle, a grenade launcher, and a number of rifle and hand grenades, he left his company in position and advanced alone. Under fire, up the slope toward the enemy encampments, struck on the head and knocked down by a glancing machine gun bullet, First Lieutenant Ogden, in spite of his painful wound and enemy fire from close range, continued up the hill. Reaching a vantage point, he silenced the 88 with a well-placed rifle grenade, and then, with hand grenades, knocked out the the 2 machine guns, again being painfully wounded. First Lieutenant Ogden's his heroic sacrifice and indomitable courage and great effort, and cleared the way for the company to continue the advance and reach its objective. Oh my gosh! Can you imagine
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I mean that is insane.
Yeah. Hey, give me all those guns and those grenades. I'll go take out all that. Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
Crazy.
that is insane.
Yep. All right. Do you want to talk about George J. Peters?
Yeah, Private Peters was a platoon radio operator for Gulf Company, made a descent into Germany near Fulon, east of the Rhine. With 10 others, he landed in a field about 75 yards from a German machine gun, supported by riflemen, and was immediately pinned down by heavy direct fire. The position of the small unit seemed hopeless, with men struggling to free themselves of their parachutes in a hail of bullets that cut them off from the nearby equipment bundles, when Private Peters stood up without orders and began a one-man charge against a hostile position. A hostile encampment armed only with a rifle and grenades. His single-handed assault immediately drew the enemy fire away from his comrades. He had run halfway to his objective, pitting rifle fire against that of a machine gun, when he was struck and knocked down to the ground by a burst. Heroically, he regained his feet and struggled onward. Once more he was torn by bullets, and this time he was unable to rise. With gallant devotion to his self-imposed mission, he crawled directly into the fire that had mortally wounded him until close enough to hurl grenades, which knocked out the machine gun, killed 2 of its operators, and drove protecting riflemen from their positions into the safety of the woods. By his intrepidity and supreme sacrifice, Private Peters saved the lives of many of his fellow soldiers and made possible for them to reach their equipment, organize, and seize their first objective. Yeah, that definitely is deserving of a Medal of Honor,
Mm-hmm.
without doubt.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness. That's just crazy. I mean, wow. I can't imagine that run and then just getting hit and then just keep going, even to the point where he's crawling. Wow. All right, let's talk about John Pinder. He won the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty on June 6th near Colville, Sertemont, France. On D-Day, technician 5th grade Pinder landed on the coast 100 yards offshore under devastating enemy machine gun and artillery fire, which caused severe casualties among the boatload. Carrying a vitally important radio, he struggled towards the shore in waist-deep water, only a few yards from the craft. He was hit by enemy fire and was gravely wounded. Technician 5th grade Pinder never stopped. He made sure and delivered the radio. Now, folks, what you don't understand about Omaha is a lot of these radio operators, because of the way the waves came in and because of the ship got stuck and having to wade through water, they lost their radios. They weren't able to work. And this guy brought in a working radio, which is definitely needed so you could tell the ships where to fire upon the Germans. Pinder, though terribly weakened by the loss of blood and in fierce pain, on 3 occasions went into the fire-swept surf to salvage communication equipment. He recovered many vital parts and equipment, including another workable radio. So that's 2 workable radios, which were so key during that time. On the 3rd trip, he was again hit, suffering machine gun bullet wounds in his legs. Still, this valiant soldier would not stop for rest or medical attention. Remaining exposed to heavy enemy fire, growing steadily weaker, he aided in establishing the vital radio communications on the beach. While so engaged, this dauntless soldier was hit for the 3rd time and killed. The immutable courage and personal bravery of technician 5th grade Pinder was magnificent and inspiration to the men whom he served.
Yeah, I mean that.
Yeah, crazy.
You know, it's also worth noting that these World War II radios were not exactly lightweight.
No, they weren't. They were very heavy. So, all right. Time to get into our last group, the badasses. And these are some amazing stories. I accidentally put Charles DeGlopper here again. So here's another visual of him. He's the guy that was in the hand glider unit that sacrificed himself. Just another great story that we already told. But let's talk about Walter Ehlers. Do you want to read about Walter Ehlers?
Yeah, I'll read about Walter Ehlers. For conspicuous gallantry and interpreted at the risk of his life and above and beyond. And, oh my God, I can't say. For conspicuous gallantry and interpreted at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty on the 9th and 10th of June, 1944, near Gauville, France, Sergeant Ehlers, always acting as the spearhead of the attack, repeatedly led his men against heavily defended enemy strongpoints, exposing himself to the deadly hostile fire whenever the situation required heroic and courageous leadership. Without waiting for an order, Sergeant Ehlers, far ahead of his men, led a squad against a strongly defended enemy strongpoint, personally killing 4 of the enemy and putting the rest to flight. Returning his attention to a nearby machine gun nest, which had opened up on his platoon, he led his men through a hail of bullets to kill a 4-man machine gun crew. After mopping up the enemy remnants at the area, he led his men yet to another machine gun nest, where he personally killed 3 of the enemy and drove the others to cover, capturing the position. On the following day, having advanced deep into the enemy territory, the platoon of which Sergeant Ehlers was a member, finding himself dangerously exposed to the enemy counterattack, was ordered to withdraw. Sergeant Ehlers, after his squad had covered the withdrawal of the remainder of the platoon, stood up, fully exposed to enemy fire, deliberately drew the attention of the enemy and provided covering fire to enable his men to withdraw safely. At this point, he was wounded himself, but nevertheless recovered the automatic rifle from a wounded comrade and continued to give covering fire to the platoon's withdrawal. After having his wound treated, he refused to be evacuated and returned to lead his squad. The intrepid leadership, indomitable courage, and fearless determination of Sergeant Ehlers in the face of overwhelming enemy forces serve as an inspiration to others and reflect great credit upon himself and the armed forces of the United States.
Wow. What a badass.
Yeah, this guy. And, if you look at this picture, I mean, He looks like a very nice young man.
Mm-hmm. But what a hero. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. All I can say is in 1944, don't tick him off.
Yeah, no kidding.
It might have ended very bad for you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, time and time drawing fire and covering his men so they can retreat. That's pretty awesome. Pretty cool. All right. This next guy is a guy that we learned about and we went and saw his grave. This is a picture of his grave, Jimmy Monteith. And this is Jimmy Monteith's citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty on June 6th, 1944, near Colville-sur-Mer, France, First Lieutenant Monteith landed with the initial assault waves on the coast of France under heavy enemy fire. Without regard to his own personal safety, he continually moved up and down the beach, reorganizing his men for further assault. He then led the assault over a narrow protective ledge and across the flat, exposed terrain to comparative safety of a cliff. Retracing his steps across the beach, across the field of the beach, he moved over to where two tanks were buttoned up and blind under violent enemy artillery and machine gun fire. Completely exposed to the intense fire, First Lieutenant Monteith led the tanks on foot through the minefield and into firing positions. Under his direction, several enemy positions were destroyed. He then rejoined his company, and under his leadership, his men captured an advantageous position on the hill. Supervising the defense of the newly won position against repeated vicious counterattacks, he continued to ignore his own personal safety, repeatedly crossing 200 or 300 yards of open terrain under heavy fire to strengthen links in his defensive chain. When the enemy succeeded in completely surrounding First Lieutenant Monteith and his unit, and while leading the fight out of the situation, First Lieutenant Monteith was killed by enemy fire. The courage, gallantry, and intrepid leadership displayed by First Lieutenant Monteith is worthy of emulation. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That is certainly worthy of the Medal of Honor.
Yeah. And here's a view of Omaha Beach. There's a great looking guy with the picture of Omaha Beach. And this is kind of what the seawall was there when they were there. If you look in this picture right here in the left hand corner, so up
Mhm.
here was their heavy machine gun fire nest, and then this cannon right here was the big cannon that really blew up everybody on Omaha Beach. That thing took out several boats and was the most dangerous weapon that they had to take out on the beach. That thing caused so much harm, and the cannon's still in there. So, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean
can you imagine that?
it's difficult. It's
Hmm.
difficult to even imagine that.
Yeah. So this first picture right here was taken at low tide, and then this was like 30 minutes later when the tide's coming in. Kind of crazy. And that's what happened there. And this is Dog Green. This is where we're Saving Private Ryan. This is the beach where so many men were killed.
Hmm.
It's crazy. All right, there's another guy that we learned about, and if you want to read about Frank Peregory, this is his grave in Normandy.
Yeah, on the 8th of June, 1944, 3rd Battalion of the 116th Infantry was advancing on a strongly held German defense at Grandcampi, France,
Mm-hmm.
when the leading elements were suddenly halted by a decimating machine gun fire from a firmly entrenched enemy force on the high ground overlooking the town. After numerous attempts to neutralize the enemy position by supporting artillery and tank fire had proved ineffective, Sergeant Peregory, on his own initiative, advanced up the hill under withering fire and worked his way to the crest, where he discovered an entrenchment leading to the main fortifications 200 yards away. Without hesitating, he leapt into the trench and moved towards the entrenchment, encountering a squad of enemy riflemen. He fearlessly attacked them with hand grenades and bayonet, killed 8 and forced 3 to surrender. Continuing along the trench, he single-handedly forced the surrender of 32 more riflemen, captured the machine gunners, and opened the way for the leading element of the battalion to advance and secure its objective. The extraordinary gallantry and aggressiveness displayed by Sergeant Peregory is exemplary of the highest traditions of the armed forces.
Wow, can you imagine that? He gets in a trench and captures all those men.
That is something else. That's
badass.
Yeah, something, Rob, I don't think you've mentioned about the Medal of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe all these accounts have to be corroborated by two or more people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do.
So all of this has been seen. And something else that just came to mind, when we were talking about Bastogne,
mm-hmm.
and actors, Mel Brooks, did you know he was at Bastogne with an armor unit?
Oh, really? So he might have been part of the anti-tank brigade that was there that were key to holding Bastogne too.
He could have been.
Yeah, Bastogne was very interesting. Having been there, it's even more interesting now. Just wait, guys. In a couple weeks, when we talk about Band of Brothers, I will show you pictures of Bastogne and tell you some stories, especially about Company E there. Pretty cool stuff. All right. Are you ready to hear about two other badasses? I'm going to take the next two because the next one I know really well, the story. And then the next one is a legend called The Ghost. But we're going to talk about Day Turner. And Day Turner, we got to visit his grave. This is his grave. And oh my goodness, this guy was a badass. So let me tell you this story. I learned this story over there, and it just was amazing. Agent Pepsi 1. So he commanded a 9-man squad with the mission of holding a critical flank position. When the overwhelming numbers of the enemy attacked under cover of a withering artillery motor and rocket fire, he withdrew his squad into a nearby house, determined to defend it to the last man. So basically, he had a whole battalion coming at him, and they retreated to a 2-story house. Okay. Basically, the enemy attacks again and again were repulsed with heavy losses. So they were up on the second floor, knocking out the enemy. A lot of these guys got wounded. They were running out of ammo. Supported by direct tank fire, they finally gained entrance. The Germans did. But the intrepid sergeant refused to surrender. Although 5 of his men were wounded and 1 killed, he boldly did this. So the Germans were coming up to the second floor. He had his rifle, and he was out of bullets. So guess what? Fixed bayonet, baby, and he stuck the first guy, in the chest. The guy crumpled back and knocked out a couple of Germans as he fallen down the stairs. Realizing that he doesn't have any other weapon or any other tool to use, he grabs a can of flaming oil. So the oil lamp was right there. So he grabs a can of flaming oil and throws it at like 5 or 6 Germans. It hits them. They're all catching fire. Okay. They're on fire. They're dispersing and running outside into the snow, trying to put out the fire. So he basically got that, fought dodgingly from room to room, getting out there and fierce hand-to-hand combat with these guys. He got some grenades and hurled grenades hand for hand. He also picked up a German machine gun and started firing on the Germans. He hurled hand grenade for hand grenade, bayoneted 2 fanatical Germans, so he bayoneted a couple more who rushed the doorway he was defending, and fought with his enemy's weapons, which was machine gun. When his own ammunition was expelled, the savage fight raged 4 hours, and finally, when only 3 men of the defending squad were left unwounded, the enemy surrendered. 25 prisoners were taken, 11 enemy dead, and a great number of wounded were counted. Sergeant Turner's valiant stand will live on as a constant inspiration to his comrades. His heroic, inspiring leadership, his determination, his courageous devotion to duty exemplify the highest traditions of military service. What a badass.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he bayonets the guy. The guy falls over. He grabs the can and throws it at him. It'll catch fire. He takes the bayonet out of the dead guy and bayonets 2 other guys, goes out, picks up grenades, throws grenades at the oncoming Germans, and picks up the machine gun and fights them off. I mean, good grief. 25 prisoners. That's amazing. So, okay. So we got to talk about this guy. I'm going to let you take the last two, but I want to talk about Matt Urban because it's rather
Okay.
long and lengthy. And he was awarded the Medal of Honor later on, actually by Jimmy Carter when they found out more of his actions. He was known as the Ghost, and he is the second most decorated man behind Audie Murphy. Matt Urban distinguished himself by a series of bold, heroic actions exemplified by a singular, outstanding combat leadership, personal bravery, and tenacious devotion to duty. During a period from June 14th to September 3rd, 1944, while assigned to the 2nd Battalion's 60th Infantry Regiment, 9th Infantry Division, on the 14th of June, Captain Urban's company, attacking Renault, France, encountered heavy enemy small arms and tank fire. The enemy tanks were unmercifully ranking his unit's positions and inflicting heavy casualties. Captain Urban, realizing that his company was in imminent danger of being decimated, armed himself with a bazooka. He worked his way with with an ammo carrier through hedgerows under the continued barrage of fire to point near the tanks. He brazenly exposed himself to enemy fire and, firing the bazooka, destroyed both tanks. Responding to Captain Urban's action, the company moved forward and routed the enemy. Later that same day, still in the attack near the Orangles, Captain Urban, wounded in the leg by direct fire from a 37mm tank gun, he refused evacuation and continued to lead his company until they moved into defensive positions for the night. At 500 hours the next day, still in the attack near the Orangles, Captain Urban, though badly wounded, directed his company in another attack. 1 hour later, he was again wounded, suffering from 2 wounds, one serious. He was evacuated to England. In mid-July, while recovering from his wounds, he learned of his unit's severe losses in the hedgerows of Normandy. Realizing his unit's need for battle-tested leaders, he voluntarily left the hospital and hitchhiked his way back to his unit near Saint-Lô, France. Arriving the 2nd Battalion command post at 11:30 hours on the 25th of July, he found that his unit had jumped off at 1100 hours in the first attack of Operation Cobra. Still limping from his leg wound, Captain Urban made his way forward to retake command of his company. He found his company held up by strong enemy opposition. 2 supporting tanks had been destroyed, and another intact, but with no tank commander or gunner, was not moving. He located a lieutenant in charge of the support tanks and directed a plan of attack to eliminate the enemy's strong point. The lieutenant and sergeant were immediately killed by heavy enemy fire when they tried to mount the tank. Captain Urban, though physically hampered by his leg, and knowing quick action had to be taken, dashed through the skating fire, mounted the tank. With enemy bullets ricocheting from the tank, Captain Urban ordered the tank forward and, completely exposed to the enemy fire, manned the machine gun and placed devastating fire on the enemy. His action in the face of enemy fire galvanized the battalion into action, and they attacked and destroyed the enemy position. On August 2nd, Captain Urban was wounded in the chest by shell fragments, and, disregarding the recommendation of the battalion surgeon, again refused evacuation. On the 6th of August, Captain Urban became the commander of the 2nd Battalion, and on the 15th of August, he was again wounded but remained with his unit. On September 3rd, the 2nd Battalion was given the mission of establishing a crossing point on the Meuse River in Heber, Belgium. The enemy planned to stop the advance of the Allied army by concentrating heavy forces at the Meuse. The 2nd Battalion, attacking towards the crossing point, encountered fierce enemy artillery, small arms, and mortar fire, which stopped the attack. Captain Urban quickly moved from his command position to lead position of the battalion. Reorganizing the attack elements, he personally led a charge toward the enemy's strong point. As the charge moved across the open terrain, Captain Urban was seriously wounded in the neck. Although unable to talk above a whisper from paralyzing network and in danger of losing his life, he refused to be evacuated again, and the enemy was routed and the battalion had secured the crossing point on the Meuse River. Captain Urban's personal leadership, limitless bravery, and repeated extraordinary exposure to heavy enemy fire served as an inspiration to his entire battalion. His valorous and intrepid actions reflected in utmost credit upon and uphold the noble traditions of the United States Army. My goodness, he was decorated in Jimmy Carter in the 70s. And it took that long ago for him to get decorated. But this guy was called the Ghost because he just wouldn't die. He kept leading his
Yeah,
men
I mean,
getting hit, and then kept leading his men getting hit. And the Germans were like, "What do we got to do to kill this guy? It's crazy."
that is yeah. Oh my
So,
God.
yep, they called him the Ghost because he kept popping up and he wouldn't die.
And
So,
rightfully so.
yep. All right. Do you want to take the last two, Holton Whittington
Yeah,
and
I'll
the
do that.
famous Audie Murphy?
For conspicuous gallantry interpreted at the risk of life and beyond, above and beyond the call of duty on the night of the 29th of July, 1944, near Grimesnil, France, during an enemy armored attack, Sergeant Whittington, a squad leader, assumed command of his platoon, and the platoon leader and platoon sergeant became missing in action. He reorganized the defense and, under fire, courageously crawled between gun positions to check the actions of his men. When the advancing enemy attempted to penetrate the roadblock, Sergeant Whittington, completely disregarding intense enemy action, mounted a tank by shouting through the turret, directed it to the position to fire point blank at the leading Mark V German tank. The destruction of this vehicle blocked all movement of the remaining enemy column, consisting over 100 vehicles of a Panzer unit. The blocked vehicles were then destroyed by hand grenades, bazooka tank, and artillery fire, and large numbers of enemy personnel were wiped out by a bold and resolute bayonet charge inspired by Sergeant Whittington. When a medical aid man who became a casualty, Sergeant Whittington personally administered first aid to this wounded man. The dynamic leadership and inspiring example and the doubtless courage of Sergeant Whittington above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that is something.
I mean, he knocked out a tank and it blocked the road.
Right, and and the Mark V, that's a Panther tank.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fairly heavy vehicle.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, wow. So he lived through the war and died in 1969, and this is his gravestone. But man, what a hero. So, and we can't talk about the heroes of World War II in the European theater without mentioning the most decorated hero of them all, Mr. Audie Murphy. Do you want to tell
Right.
everybody about him?
Yeah, Audie Murphy. He was a citation reads, Second Lieutenant Murphy commanded Bravo Company, which was attacked by 6 tanks and waves of infantry. Lieutenant Murphy ordered his men to withdraw to a prepared position in the woods, while he remained forward of his command post and continued to give fire directions to artillery by telephone. Behind him, to his right, one of our tank destroyers received a direct hit and began to burn. Its crew withdrew to the woods. Lieutenant Murphy continued to direct artillery fire, which killed large numbers of the advancing enemy infantry. With the enemy tanks abreast of his position, Lieutenant Murphy climbed on the burning tank destroyer, which itself was in danger of blowing up at any moment, and employed his 50 caliber machine gun against the enemy. He was alone and exposed to German fire from 3 sides, but his deadly fire killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to waver. The enemy tanks, through the infantry support, began to fall back. For an hour, the Germans tried every available weapon to eliminate Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position and wiped out a squad that was trying to creep up unnoticed on his right flank. Germans reached as close as 10 yards, only to be mowed down by his fire. He received a leg wound, but ignored it and continued his single-handed fight until his ammunition was exhausted. He then made his way back to his company, refused medical attention, and organized the company in a counterattack, which forced the Germans to withdraw. His directing of artillery fire wiped out many of the enemy. He killed or wounded about 50. Lieutenant Murphy's indomitable courage and his refusal to give an inch of ground saved his company from possible encirclement and destruction, and enabled it to hold the woods which had become the enemy's objective. When asked after the war why he had seized the machine gun and taken on an entire company of the infantry, he replied, "They were killing my friends." Murphy was removed from the front lines and made a liaison officer. He was promoted to first lieutenant on the 22nd of February 1945, and on the 10th of June 1945, over a month after the German surrender, he returned from Europe to a hero's welcome in his home state of Texas, where he was fitted with parades, banquets, and speeches. Murphy was discharged from the active duty with the U.S. Army as a first lieutenant at Fort Houston in San Antonio, Texas, on the 17th of August 1945, and his discharge from the Army on 21st of September 1945. He spent 29 months overseas and just under 2 years in combat with the 3rd Infantry Division, all before he had turned 21 years of age. Murphy garnered nationwide recognition, appearing on the cover of Life magazine for the July 16th, 1945 edition. After the Korean War broke out in June 1950, Murphy joined the 36th Infantry Division of the Texas National Guard. However, that division was not called up for combat duty. By the time he left the Guard in 1966, he had attained the rank of major. So, I mean, this is a. I mean, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, crazy. I mean, just insane how much he did, and he was a very young man at the time too. I mean,
Yeah, Audie Murphy. My understanding, he was also very slight build. I want to say he was like 5'3" or something like that. Maybe
yeah, he was
130
too small.
pounds.
He had to join the Army because the Marines wouldn't take him, and he couldn't get in anywhere else. So, but yeah, that's the story of these just incredible men. I mean, gosh, all of them are worthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, folks, what are your thoughts on these? What do you know about some of these fine men? Later on, we'll probably do some in the Pacific and some round out the World War II Medal of Honor winners. But man, oh man, I just think these stories are just inspiring and they need to be told.
I have one more thing to say about all of this.
Sure, go ahead.
And it's not just about what we talked about today here. During World War II, on all sides, all combatants, there were about 90 million soldiers, between 90 million and 100 million soldiers that fought during the Second World War on all sides. And right now, I just saw something about a week ago that there are less than 1 million left of all of these men.
Yeah.
Of all these people that fought. And from my understanding is we're losing between 1,000 and 1,500 a day. So it's not going to be very long until there are going to be no more living World War II veterans. And my grandfathers, both of my grandfathers were World War II veterans.
Yes, as were mine.
They were very quiet about what they did. And I think it's a part of that generation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, that's something to be said. And, we don't have any World War I veterans left. They've all passed. I think the last one passed in 2011.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about that, this man was 109 years old or 110.
Yeah. Crazy.
So, a World War II veteran nowadays is going to be in his late 90s.
Yeah.
If you really think about it. And
yeah, I mean, Normandy was 81 years ago.
Yeah, there are not many left.
No, not at all. And, that's why these stories need to be told. That's why we need to remember these men, because their sacrifices were supreme. I mean, to save the whole world, to save freedom for the whole world. It's just amazing. And so thankful for their bravery and sacrifice. And
So
that's
am
why I
I.
wanted to do this video and tell their stories. I think that's why it's so important. So,
Yeah, I so agree. I so agree.
yeah. But anyway, folks, tell us what you think. Be sure to like, subscribe, share this video, tell these stories. They're amazing stories. And I don't know about you, Agent Pepsi One, but I sure learned a lot by just reading about some of these men and just
Oh yeah.
picturing what their actions were in my mind. I mean, you could make a movie about any one of these men on their own, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's one about Audie Murphy.
Oh, yeah, which he did. He
Yes, right.
starred
He
in.
started it,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, absolutely. But a lot of these, a lot of these were probably very private people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of them were heroes in the war, but they didn't wear their medals on their chest or anything like that or flaunt it. As a matter of fact, I think it's best said by Dick Winters at the end of Band of Brothers, where he reads the letter about Grandpa, were you here on the war? Grandpa says no, but I served with a company of heroes. And yeah, that says it all.
Mhm.
So, anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Leave any comments about any of these men. Are there any Medal of Honor winners that you think we need to cover next time? Any other servicemen that you think we should cover? Thank you so much, Agent Pepsi One, for joining me.
You're
Certainly
quite
appreciate it.
welcome.
And folks, we'll see you on the next video.